watching Public Eye, brought to you by the New Vision Movement. And now, here's your host, Dr. Frank McField.
Hello and welcome to Public Eye. There's so much that's happened since the last Public Eye show. I mean, there has been so much that has happened. And, doing the show like once a month at the last Wednesday of each month, time still goes by pretty fast. I mean, 1 month doesn't really last very long anymore. For some strange reason, the time just keeps on flying by. I used to be told before, when I was younger, that the older you got, the more you realize how little time one really does have on this earth. And when one has so little time on the earth, and when one really comes to that realization, in fact, that this is true, that one has a very, very short period here on earth, you wonder why you should spend your time arguing with people, fighting with people, trying to change people, trying to educate people. Why not just accept things the way they are, as Ella said in Time Longer Than a Rope, many moons ago. She said to Beatman, maybe the best thing to do is just accept things the way they are. And but some of us just do not have that type of ability to accept things the way they are. I went to the Legislative Assembly today, and I went to hear the delivery of the throne speech by His Excellency the Governor, and also to hear the delivery by the Leader of Government Business of his budget, I guess what he called framework or whatever. Or the way it works these days, since the new management finance law, which I think must be, this is the 5th year I think they've been having that particular sort of thing, is that the governor gives his throne speech because the budget now coincides with the opening of Parliament. So the Parliament has just opened now for their final session, which will, end in May sometime, or perhaps before May next year, when the elections, of course, will be called. But now the way they work it is that the governor does his throne speech, the financial secretary does his budget address, and then the Leader of Government Business then does his long oratory. And this time, Mr. Tibbetts really started his political campaign, in other words, for 2009. So I don't know how many of you have been following the budget address and Mr. Tibbetts' assertion that, in fact, the country is better than it was 5 years ago when it was under the United Democratic Party. He's actually acquainting this PPM government to blessings by God. He's saying that the people really, rather than complaining, should be counting their blessings one by one, and they should be naming them, and they should be rejoicing about what the Lord has done in putting the PPM government in power over these islands, and removing the corruption and the lack of transparency, and bringing sunshine and all of the good things back to the good people of the Cayman Islands. Now, I've always had difficulties understanding Mr. Kirk Tibbetts. And I said that in my election speech, my last speech in 2005. I asked the people to tell me one good thing that Mr. Kirk Tibbetts had done. I said to the people that Mr. Kirk Tibbetts had spent his time in the Legislative Assembly since he was elected in 1992, sitting on the fence, basically, not wanting to take sides, wanting always to have the easy way out, wanting always to appeal to the populace, to get the popular support, to get the popular votes, to be appreciated and liked by people, to find his way as what we could call the master of ceremony at whatever funeral for whatever person or whatever class of person or whatever. He has always sought to be seen as the sympathetic, understanding, caring caregiver. He's always attempted to make people believe that he cared for you more than you could even care for yourself. So when he started his speech today, he started it by quoting the Bible and saying that there's a season for everything. And basically, I think he was trying to tell us that it was also a season for plenty, and it was a season for little. But he was trying to so much confuse us in his posturing. Like I said, it was as if he was reading an obituary at a funeral, in the way in which he started, in the way in which he tried to appeal to the assembly or to the audience that was watching him on TV, because he was really saying that we should not be complaining in the Cayman Islands, because look at all these poor countries. Look at all the poverty. Look at all the difficulties. We should be counting our blessings here in the Cayman Islands, because in spite of the worldwide economic crises that are taking place, the good ship Cayman is steady, and that the pillows of the economy have never been so strong as under the PPM government. In other words, the economy of this country has never been so good before. Now that tends to contradict most of what I hear people saying. Maybe the people that I talk to or talk to me are ungrateful people. Very ungrateful that they cannot appreciate what Mr. Kirk Tibbetts have been doing for them over the last 3 years. But I doubt that. I don't think these are ungrateful people. I think these people understand very well that the economy is not good for them. It is good for Mr. Tibbetts. It is good for Mr. Tibbetts' friends, but it is not good for the people who are left out of the clique, who are not a part of the pack, who are not a part of the gang. It's not good for us. It's not good for me. It's not good for you if you are not a part and parcel of the PPM, and those of the PPM that have been selected to be rewarded in order to continue the PPM bad management of the economy and the social atmosphere in the country. Now, I feel that the essence of the problem that we have in this country with regards to the economy is not so much that the pillows of the economy are weaker than they were before. What has happened, in fact, is that those of us that were impacted positively by economic growth in this country are no longer being impacted. What has happened really is that Cayman has become dependent upon the growth of what I call the Caymanian corporations. It is your big law firms, your large accounting firms, your large hotels, your large retailers that retail to cruise ship tourists and so forth and so on. Those are the people that are comfortable to a certain extent within Cayman's present economic situation. W.S. Walker and Company, to mention one, is continuing to build its empire. We see the new building that is going next to Cayman National Bank. We see that that bank is being built in such a way as to become a monument, not to the progress of the Caymanian people, but to the progress of the family and partners that have built that firm. Now, we don't want to take anything away from those persons that have worked long hours in order to enrich themselves and to give Cayman a good reputation as a stable and wealthy society. What we are saying, though, is that the wealth and the stability is not impacting what we consider to be the average Caymanian, or as Mr. Pearson, Linford Pearson used to say before, the little man. The little man is left out of the equation. And when the PPM begin to give you their gospel of why it is good for you to have them running your government at the moment, they forget about the little man. They forget that a lot of us can no longer socially and economically participate in the society because we do not have the means to do so. But nevertheless, we see that other important companies like Appleby, used to be Hunter and Hunter, is near Mary Street and Cardinal Avenue. We see that these companies have now branches in maybe 3 or 4 different countries. These countries are gone international, global. If they don't make any money here, they make money in the Bahamas or in the Virgin Islands or in Bermuda or in Hong Kong or wherever it is that they might have their extended offices. So they are not just well off because they can reap and benefit from the Cayman Islands. They are well off because they can reap and benefit from other places. It's like a tree that is by a river, but its roots run far and far and far. So even when there's no water there, maybe water can be found someplace else, and the tree does never dry up. It does never die of thirst. These people are part of an international community that is very wealthy and very powerful, and that they do not have all their eggs in one basket. So Cayman is not ultimately all they have. It is not all important to them as it is to those of us that have no place else to go. No other watering hole, no other hunting ground, no other pasture to be put out when we're old and broken and sore and can no longer contribute to our bosses. So the fact that revenue continues to come into our country as a result of these accounting firms and law firms, the corporate Cayman, benefiting from the extension and the growth of hedge funds and other types of money evasion tactics. The fact that these companies benefit, the fact that the persons who want to be assisted is willing to pay to these people to be assisted. We get something as a country. We get our little dimes from their thousands. We get our little small percentage, which is what the government continues to brag about, the fact that there is a growth in the need for us as a territory, because we have companies here that are willing to offer to those persons in these countries this type of assistance. But these companies are mainly employing people from other countries. We call them knowledge workers, skilled persons. These people from these other countries do not spend money on Eastern Avenue. And if they do, it's at Kirk's. These people do not spend money on Shedden Road. These people do not spend money with the local grassroots community, with the little people. So there is a disjunction between the wealth that these people have, the affluence that these people have, the stream of money that is running from, say, the US or Canada or Germany to these companies, to the workers in these companies. But it now coming to us, the smaller business people, the smaller merchants. It's not coming to us, the smaller contractors. It's not coming to the small businesses in the Cayman Islands, because we are not needed in the economic puzzle. We are not seen as necessary for corporate Cayman, because corporate Cayman looks after its people in the way in which feudal lords looked after their people in medieval times. So if there's a problem, for instance, like a hurricane, corporate Cayman charters a plane to take their people off. The little people have to worry about how they're going to get off or stay here to defend the country until corporate Cayman comes back. These are the kind of social and economic divisions that we begin to see in the society that the PPM is very comfortable with. Because now corporate Cayman, at least under the PPM government, have a voice. Corporate Cayman can begin to dictate in a way that makes corporate Cayman very comfortable with the PPM government. They have found a government that they feel comfortable with. But it is simply because corporate Cayman does not have to get involved in paying so that equality can be more widespread in the Cayman Islands. For instance, when we come to issues of building roads or building schools or taking away garbage, we find that government taxes are always on the poor. When I was a backbencher, I brought a motion back in 2000 to remove the duties from the foodstuff, because I felt that people should not have to pay taxes on something that was so necessary like food. If we can talk about being tax-free, but yet we're going to put taxes on food, milk that babies were drinking, the items that Mr. Kirk-Tibbetts are talking about now that have no duties, they have no duties because I was the one who brought the motion. Thinking about the little man, I brought the motion to remove the duties from the food stuff. There was a big debate about that. How could I bring a motion? How would that work? That was going to deprive government of millions and millions of dollars. And Mr. Truman Borden was in the government at that particular time, and he accepted the motion, and they removed the duties from most of the food items, not just butter and milk, but grapes and oranges as well, so that poor people could have access to nutritious foods. And as soon as Mr. Kirk-Tibbetts got into the government in 2000 and became leader of government business in 2000, Mr. Kirk-Tibbetts put the duties back on the food stuff again, defeating or trying to defeat what I had tried to accomplish for the little man, saying that there was no way of policing this situation, because at the end of the day, he was saying the merchants were not passing on the benefits to the consumer. Well, if the merchants were not passing on the benefits to the consumer, then what we should have done, we should have organized people, hired people that would have gone around and would have vetted what the merchants were doing to make sure that they were doing what they were supposed to have been doing. But it was never done. What I'm saying is that corporate Cayman, in terms of what they have to pay and in terms of what they earn, pay nothing. We as the little people, in terms of what we earn, in terms of what we pay so much. If you have a little business, for instance, the government is going to charge you to set up a company if you want to be safe and not be liable. If you want to have your liability limited, then you have to create a limited company. You have to pay for the formation of the company. You have to pay the government every year to re-register the company. You have to submit to the Trade and Business Board every year the names of the shareholders and directors of the company. Otherwise, they will not give you your license or renew your business license to allow you to do your business. You cannot do business without the government each year telling you that you can do the business. And the only reason why the government is interested in that is because the government wants to tax you without saying they're taxing you. They want to charge you each year to renew your business a certain amount of money. Whether or not you make money on that business or not, the government is going to take that money. The government will not give you a work permit for a worker if you have not paid them the taxes for the business license. The government taxes you for the worker that is going to work in your business before the worker begins to work for you. So before you have made any money on the worker, the government has already made money on the worker. If you have 2 or 3 workers on work permits, the government says you have to pay health insurance. You have to participate in a pension plan, a health insurance plan, and a pension plan. At the end of the day, the government creates conditions for small businesses that are totally unrealistic. Yet Mr. Kirk Tibbetts continued to say that you all have benefit under PPM, under the PPM management. A government that does not talk about these issues, a government that has not analyzed the kind of impact that is having on little people in the Cayman Islands and the way in which the corporations, the Caymanian corporations, are allowed to grow and get fat. Now, what I'm saying is we have, as little business people, to pay for the roads that these other rich people are driving on. We're paying for them. We're probably paying in proportion to what we earn, in proportion to what we value. We are making a greater contribution than those other people are making. So I believe that this kind of taxation system is harmful. It's confusing. It's devious. The government says that it has brought no new revenue measures. Of course, it's an election year. They're not going to come and bring any new taxes. What they're going to do is to collect the taxes that they have brought before or that were there before. So now if you're a small business person, now you have to pay the government a percentage on the lease that you have, whether or not that be a verbal lease agreement or a written lease agreement. So if you have a beauty salon, you got a little place out there where you're renting it from a landlord, the government is going to tax you for renting, but it's not going to tax your landlord. What kind of mentality do we have in this country? What kind of mentality? It is all stacked up against making sure that small people, poor people, people who are beginning, don't get started. Because I go to rent a place to do a barber shop. I go to rent a place to do a video shop. And the government comes and says, oh yes, you have Cayman films in this place now, and how much are you paying? And if you're paying this amount, then you got to pay 5%. If you're paying this amount, you got to pay that percent. The government begins to tax. When they tax all of the people who are renting these little accommodations. Yet they're not taxing the people who are renting all these apartments. People who have come in and bought up all these apartments and then rent apartments. They're not taxing them. They're not taxing the hotels in that way. Why is it that we're going after the small business? It's already true that the small business cost of operation has increased as a result of the price of oil, the cost of food, the cost of everything. So if you're in a little restaurant business and the price of food is going up, and you have to sell food to the guy who works with the gas company. Now the guy that's working with the gas company got to pay more for food, but the people who he's working for are not going to put up his wages. So what is the person who's working for the gas company going to do? He's going to buy less food from you. So your little food business is going to decrease. And it goes for everything. So you have the reduction of commerce within our areas. Now, a lot of us who are small business people in this country, especially in the District of Georgetown, we have to start thinking together. We have to start thinking and asking, why is it that the government is only interested in cruise ship passengers going to certain places, but they're not interested in cruise ship passengers coming into central Georgetown and little areas like where I have my business and where you have your business or your friend have his business? Why is it the government is doing nothing? You don't see any tourists going into areas in central Georgetown. We're supposed to have a relatively safe society. We pay the police a lot of money for this so-called safety and security that we have in this country. Why are not the small people then benefiting from this? Why are the tourists not being encouraged to come into our areas? Why is no advertising being spent to encourage them to come to central Georgetown and to come into those areas and see how the other half lives and how the other half parties? How is it that we're not having this? We have it in Jamaica. We have it in the Bahamas, we have it in other countries that value their culture and value their grassroots and their grassroots people. Hiring Bata Banu once a year or K-Fest once a year and going on with this thing, and then the so-called people's culture or people's economics that should grow out of this dies because the government does not continue to feed this and stipulate this. You know, a lot of people ask me, Frank, well, how is it that you say all these things now when you're in government, what you say? But look at my record. Look at my record in government from the time I went in 96. I started to do things that would impact the poorer people in this country, and that was the problem they had with me, not when I was elected, but before I was elected. And once I was elected and had a little bit of clout, it became even a greater issue, the fact that I would not abandon the little man, that I would not run away from the neighborhood, that I would not run away from associating with this one and that one, regardless of what they labeled me as. The fact that I was truthful about who I am, and what I feel, and what I see, and what I know, what I can understand. So we have a real lack of ability or willingness on the part of people to explore the issues as they really are and the issues as they really impact people in this country. We have corporate Cayman. We have little Cayman. And I don't mean the Cayman Brac, little Cayman. I mean the little people in Cayman. And the government is talking now about the success of their economic strategy over the last 3 years, and the little people are talking about how this economic strategy of the PPM have destroyed them, have destroyed their little businesses. Now the PPM is sending the tax man at you again to tax you for the little place that you're renting to do your little business. And then they say they're not going to put in anything up. No, they're not going to put it up on corporate Cayman. They're going to pull it out of you, the little person. They're going to make you pay. They're going to make me pay. They're going to make us pay through the nose. They're going to make us pay through the ear. They're going to make us pay through the mouth. They're going to pull it and extract it from us until there is nothing left, and then they will continue to say this is better than corruption, because if you didn't have us doing this for you, if you didn't have us there, you'll have that corrupt bunch. What corrupt bunch? I was just reading in the papers, listening to the talk show about the Auditor General's errors. But the Auditor General's errors were very obvious because the Auditor General is not an expert in construction, engineering, architecture, or any of those areas where he goes in and passes professional judgment. What is he doing in these areas? This man has a ego problem. Then he should get a TV show like me and he can express himself. And he don't have to worry about this old ego because he'll flaunt it out. If he wants people to give him attention, if he wants to seem important, then he could find other ways to be this, other than by going there giving people bad names. Because when an Auditor General makes a report, we believe that what he says is the gospel. That is true. The government is going to always come back, or the people who want to use it is going to always come back and say, well, the Auditor General said this. The Auditor General is now saying that with regards to the port, that he's not changing his report. They should have told him this. He should have asked. Who knows? Now he's going to say, well, you're at fault, and they're going to say, well, he's at fault. The point is that it hurts people when people make accusation. This was the same situation with regards to the affordable houses. I said to the Auditor General, I said to the papers, I said to people from the very beginning, the man does not know what he talks about. He comes into a situation and he says, well, this should be like this and this should be like this. But what about it if you're out of government and the people who are not government now, the civil servant or the bureaucrat or whatever, didn't like you, and they don't tell the Auditor General about this, or they don't tell the Auditor General about that. They withhold the information from the Auditor General, and yet he can go with that information and publish it and give you a bad name. I said also that with regards to the housing, that the report from the Auditor General should have gone to the Public Accounts Committee, first of all, where it could be discussed and where everybody had a possibility to really look at it and see if all the pieces were in place. In many instances, and in the case of the National Housing Community Development Trust, in this particular situation, a lot of pieces were not in place. Now, the PPM are still ringing that bell. They're still ringing that bell. They're still talking about the investigation that is not complete. But the only reason why the investigation is not complete is because there are lapses in obviously in these people doing their investigations, because there's no urgency to them. And there's no urgency to them because there's no crime to them. If there was a crime, I go on the road and they want to pick me up and lock me up just because I open my mouth. They're going to pick me up and lock me up and beat me up because I open my mouth. What do you think they would do if there was a possibility where they could say, yeah, Frank McField is a thief? Jesus goodness, man, they'll cut my neck off. Have no fear about that. Have no fear. So the fact that this thing is dragged on is simply because it's convenient for the politicians to drag it on so they can always bring it back. Bring it back. Now, that brings us back to the idea. What happened to Clifford? I told you a lot of things have happened since the last Public Eye show. The governor paid $225,000 to tell us what we knew, which was that Clifford took the files and gave them to Des. He gave them to Desmond. And the fight between him and Desmond would never have occurred if Clifford hadn't threatened or they haven't taken off Desmond paper off of that airline that was going Cayman Black. So they had their little fight, their lovers' quarrel. And this is how it worked out. But we know that Clifford took these documents. He just about said that. He was talking about things from those meetings. I've dealt with the situation in saying that I felt that the governor had the right to call a commission of inquiry if he so desired to do so. But I cannot understand why the governor would call a commission of inquiry, pay that amount of money just to tell us that Clifford took the documents and it's believed that Clifford did it for political purposes rather than because of any altruistic reason, any kind of reasons to help society. He did it to help himself, to get some power, to be in his little position that he so adores being in, until Charles Whitaker knocked him out. So the point about this is that people say, well, the governor is a great guy. He did this, but why? $250,000 or $225,000, Mark? Jeez, with the needy people in the country that we have, and you don't chastise Clifford? I was fired in 1979 because I made press statements as a civil servant. I was fired in 1994 because I wrote a letter to the papers. I was fired as a clerk working with environmental health. Wally Whitaker. Wally Whitaker was the guy who fired me. He was the director at that time, director of environmental health. He dismissed me from my position because I made a statement. I wrote a letter to the papers. And I argued I wasn't a civil servant. They argued I was a civil servant, and therefore I was bound by general orders. Now, but what happened to Clifford? There's no penalty for doing what he did. He doesn't see it as morally wrong. They continue to defend it and saying it was whistleblowing, and they're going to continue to always say it was whistleblowing. Okay, he blew the whistle on what? What? Blew the whistle saying it's time for him to get in power and time for the other one to be out of power. But that's about it. He didn't expose any corruption. What corruption was there for him to expose? There were people there who were working hard to try to help people, who were doing things that were never done before, who were fighting obstacles that were being placed in their way because nobody wanted to help the poor people. Nobody wanted to see these people achieve anything. What does Mr. Tibbetts have today in his budget for the poorer people? Giving people a reduction on the stamp duty on land for $75,000. We gave them houses for less than $75,000. Not a piece of land, a house to stay in for less than $75,000. What is Mr. Tibbetts doing by reducing for a house over $275,000 or $300,000 reduces the stamp duty? How many of the poor people, the little people, the people we really need to do something for in the country is going to be impacted by these programs? These are all programs that McKeever did already. All he's doing is copying McKeever's format. What McKeever UDP government was trying to do at the time in which they employed my services were to try to go beyond those things and try to reach those people that were unreachable, that were outside the possibilities of this economic system. So I must say then that they are coming back with the same nonsense about corruption, the same calling of names, because they do not want you to think that they're only there to support and nourish the corporate Cayman. As long as corporate Cayman feels safe, as long as corporate Cayman is prosperous, they're not interested in me and you, the little man. They go into the cocktail parties with the big law firms and their big lawyer friend, because you know Arlen is a big lawyer with his big lawyer chairman that they have for the PPM, and these people are the people who will run the country and who say they want to run the country for another 5 years, because next year they say that you will be convinced that they're the best guys and you're going to put them back because they're a blessing from God. They went Europe and begged money, they brought the money back, and now they say they're going to give it to the little small contractors to finish off the little homes that were destroyed during Ivan. So that would be a way of getting the small contractors back on their side, and the little people who have been waiting all these years to get their house fixed after Ivan to finally get it fixed because the Europeans gave them some money that they begged and they're going to now use it to buy off people and to get people to vote for them so that they can enslave them for another 3 years, because they say they can only enslave you for 3 years at a time out of the 4 years, because the last part of the 4-year term, the last year, they're going to give you something. So they say they're going to be coming back to the bars, they're going to be coming back to the more funerals, and they're going to be coming back to help the little small contractor and the smaller people. Well, little people, we are not so little, because together, collectively, we can make a big difference. And I think that we need to start thinking that way, especially in the District of Georgetown. We need to small business people, people who are aspiring to move up the ladder a little bit, not because we're making more money, but because we're trying something a little bit more adventurous. Because, believe it or not, when you start doing a small business, it could be the most difficult thing. Working for somebody sometimes can be a lot easier. But when you have to take the risks upon your own shoulders, it becomes very, very, very burdensome. So maybe we need to get together. Maybe some of you might start thinking about calling me, and we could begin to discuss some of these issues with regards to small business and how the small business people in Georgetown might begin to organize themselves and see how they might be able to influence government programs and government economic and social development strategies. Now, that brings us, of course, to a good point show where we're talking about security, and we're talking about the fact that when PPM got in, the PPM gave the police all the money that they wanted. It was against my judgment. I think that the police had good support from the UDP government. Crime was on the rise. Then the PPM said they had a lot of crime then. They have now come in as PPM government, and they have dealt with the crime, and they got crime under control. Nonsense. They need to get brothers from shooting brothers, people in the same community, people with the same, with the same, on the same economic scale. People, those are the people that are killing themselves, not going out and killing anybody else. I asked somebody, I said, when was the last time the police had to discharge their firearm? When was the last time the police had to discharge their firearm? I cannot recall an instance where I know the police have had to discharge their firearm. Why? Because nobody is going off to shoot the police. Nobody is interested in shooting the police. Nobody is interested in a fight with the police. But people are shooting each other each day. People are stabbing each other. People are doing horrible things to each other. And the police carrying around guns, intimidating people, are not helping those people who are being killed. It's not protecting them. It's not really making our community safer at all when you really think about it. It's making our community more gun conscious. It's making more of the young people feel that that's the big thing, to have a gun. If police got a gun, I gotta get gun. And if he has this kind of gun, I gotta get this kind of gun. And if my friend have that gun, I gotta get that gun, and so forth and so on. And that's what happened in our society. People are just having guns for the sake of having guns, because that's the way people are beginning to think. And the police having guns have not helped. It has actually helped to intensify. So the number of guns they had during the UDP government is minor in comparison to the number of guns that exist on our streets and in our neighborhoods today. So people are feeling safe, maybe, but I think the best way to feel safe is to have a society that has understanding and has respect for other people's rights and other people's lives. People who can be productive, people who are being channeled into being productive, where they have the possibility to get a vocational education, where they can learn something, that they can do something and feel important within their own right. And they don't have to go out playing cowboy or gangster in order to feel important. I feel that all the money that the PPM have given the police in order to buy a helicopter and in order to feel somehow with new cars that they are above the people is something that I have always been very critical to. And of course I came under police scrutiny simply because of my criticism of them a long time ago, and especially of the past or the chief of police, commissioner of police that have been suspended. Now, a lot of people don't understand what has happened, why these 2 or 3 out of the 4 most important policemen in our country, when we have such a so-called crime problem in our country. Why 3 of the 4 most top officers would be put on required leave? How do you give people leave at a time where there's so much still to be done on the streets of this island? Well, it must be a reason. And we are not told of the reason because we are not important enough to know. We are still babies who have to be told only that which will not hurt us. We cannot be, of course, entrusted with our own, we cannot be entrusted with the knowledge of our own condition. It's like the doctor comes and says, well, you have cancer, Dr. McField, but we cannot tell you that you have cancer because then you would not act like you should act. And the best thing to do is for you not to know. I want to know. Please tell me what's wrong with me, because I think that I'm a human being and I will not always be able to bear up with the knowledge of my demise, but I like to know nevertheless. And yes, I believe that the people should know what's going on in their country, but when a governor decides to bring in 9 agents from Scotland Yard to investigate one officer in a very senior position, because most likely, and I'm speculating here, because of complaints of irregularity or corruption or whatever that have been made against this person by somebody in a very senior position. Otherwise, the governor would never bring somebody from all the way in the UK or that many people from the UK to investigate. But if somebody came in to investigate me in that particular situation because of my colleagues, I would feel really terrible that they would have so little trust in me that they would put me to that extent. And then the other thing is I know that we like to push the blame on Lyndon Martin and this and that, but I know Lyndon sufficiently enough to know that if Lyndon had come to me with that story 2 or 3 times, I wouldn't have believed him. I wouldn't have believed him. I wouldn't have believed Lyndon to the point for all this to go there. Now, I can't get too much into that because of whatever, but all I'm saying is, let's be a little logical. If I come and fool you by saying, well, you know what, Johnny, I know that Danny is having an affair with your wife, and you believe me now, and you go home, you beat up your wife and do all of that, and then I say, Tom Fool Day, April Fool. You're not responsible? You're not partly responsible too? Only me is responsible? Well, what about your sense of what about the fact that you should know who your wife is? You should have some trust there. You should have some knowledge there. You should not be moved by an unstable situation or an unstable individual to do something against your wife, because you should know your wife better than that. So it shows bad judgment on your part. And bad judgment is not always bad judgment. Bad judgment could also be caused because a person might be ambitious. They might want to have somebody else's position. They might want to put somebody out of the way. It could be a career thing, a career move. The other policeman, the head with them, might feel, okay, if this one is in top, when I'm no longer on top, then I can get this kind of job. Who knows? And these people are people too, but we're not supposed to discuss them on this island. I have said from the very beginning, like a lot of people in this country, there's a lot of corruption in the police department. There's a lot of conspiracy against the people by policemen. It has been, it will be, and it will continue to go on, because they're like little gangs sometimes. They stick together on issue and issues, and it's hard to break them. What this has shown is that from the top down, we have a right to be suspicious of them. That does not necessarily mean that we must disrespect the police. It does not necessarily mean that we do without the police. But it means that police, like everybody else, must be controlled by somebody. You cannot put a man and say he's God because he is chief of police. He decided all the promotion he gave to this one and that one that wasn't qualified. There's a whole lot of things that needs to be investigated about the police department in this country, but we can't talk about it. Those of us that have experienced something, those kids that are in court that are complaining about the frame, not saying some of them didn't even do it, like one boy said. You know, the thing about it is not that we didn't do it. Police should do their work and us the right way and not make up stories about us in order to get us and conspire against us, because it makes us feel different about this. Because a lot of people that do evil feel at the end of the day that they should pay the price for it, but they don't want to pay the price, or they feel they shouldn't pay the price. The people who are catching them are as they are. We got to get back in this country to some kind of control over our circumstances, over our destinies, over our future. We cannot feel this way of being so displaced. I feel displaced, you feel displaced. Displaced means we no longer know where we belong, we should be, what power we have, what authority we have, what rights we have. Cayman no longer belong to us. We are foreigners in our own country, and the PPM is saying what a good job that they have not done the job bringing the country back to Caymanians, to put the country back in the hands of the Caymanians. They have done that. If the UDP was criticized for taking the country away from the Caymanians, how has the PPM put the country back in the hands of the Caymanians? They have put the country back in the hands of few people. They have put the country back in the hands of few. So I'm saying overall, we find that problems in our police. We find that the governor is doing what he can do to show at the end of the day that he wants to be fair, that he wants to be transparent. But at the end of the day, we can't even say what the problems are. We should be able to say, because we should be able to be involved with the solutions to the problem, and not find the solutions to the problem, we don't know what the problems are in the first. And by the time we know what the problems are, the problems would have, or the description of the problems, or what is related to us about the problems might have changed too tremendous. Anyway, I think that we need to keep praying. We need to keep praying, and we need to remember that the PM is going to come after you to get your votes. They're going to start being nice again. But remember, though they're not bringing any taxes on you, they're going to come to collect those debts that you might owe the hospital. They're going to come to collect those taxes that you might owe because you rent a place. They're going to come in all ways to get money from you. And like they said, that maybe they got CUC to reduce the price of liberty a little bit. C isn't paying for that. You are. You're paying for the reduction, because at the end of the day, that has to give up something to CUC and come take it from you again. So we all need to ask the PPM, what are they doing for the country? What are they doing for houses after 3 years? And after seeing the last budget of this government, I see no intention to build any real affordable houses or really any houses for people. There were people who were so happy thinking that they would be able to get out of these horrible houses that I brought for them and be able to go into these nice, like Kurt Tibbetts have, that one that he had. I mean, I think people really, he was so nice a guy that he would actually treat us gave them his heart because he's such a no. Nobody that spends so much time at the funeral got to be pardon to people's feelings. It's, remember that, because there's only so much of that anyone can take. But these people are professional. I don't know if she had the pictures, it would be good if you could show some pictures. I'm opening a restaurant. It's called Havana Cafe, because you got to remember, I'm half Cuban. My mother is Cuban. She speaks Spanish, and there is an attraction we have for the country. Now we have a nice little place out inside. It's in the neighborhood, and it's painting is just great. The art is fantastic. I love these paintings. I love the that's inside the cafe. You know, it really cafe. It's going to open next Friday. They think they May, and out with lunches, we're going to offer some special prices for lunches and everything. So the telephone number is 949-6643. Write it down, 949-6643. You can call and we prepare lunch for you. So when you come to lunch, you will not have to wait. We got juicy, nice Cuban steaks with black beans and cassava. It's going to be really good. I mean, we really feel comfortable there. We want to sit down. We're going to do our at least once a week, so it's going to be on two. We're going to do a little French fry and all of that stuff there. We're going to try to make. We're in with the people in the community, trying to do business, trying to survive. The last place I had, people knew the house was Ernesto, but it was not mine. I was a partner in that venture, and so I'm back at home and I feel more safe there. I want you to come and support me. Just let me talk, and talk to me to find out where our country is going. But you know, I always put politics aside. I'm not a political lunatic. I don't always have to talk politics. Sometimes I really don't even say a word about anything political. I want to talk politics. That shouldn't be from coming. They come because of the nice taste. Anyway, it's been nice talking to you. It's been good to have all these issues to bring together. Now that the government seems just falling from one problem into another problem, of time that we examine and re-examine the issue where we're going. We have to make a change next year, and I will be, regardless of how they try to get the race, so they're going to tired for SEMA, but they can't get me out of the race. Okay, good night. Bye.
Public Eye has been by the New Vision Movement.